Oil is what powers everything. It's what makes the world move, produce, and grow. Since the discovery of fossil fuels, the world population has exponentially grown. It's allowed us to expand metropolitan cities. Hell, it even made it possible for us to land on the moon and launch every satellite we have in orbit right now. This video was inspired by a few quotes from the show, Landman, from two characters. One is Monty Miller, a billionaire owner of a small to medium oil drilling company played by John Hamm, and the second is Tommy Norris, the manager that oversees the whole operation and Monty's right hand, played by Billy Bob Thornton. Let's first talk about what he says about the oil industry. And if you haven't watched the show, don't worry, there are no spoilers here. One of his famous scenes is when he talks about how the whole world is dependent on oil, and he goes on to explain that. In the scene, Tommy Norris argues that everything from wind turbines to everyday items rely on oil, roads and car tires, tennis rackets, lipstick and refrigerators, antihistamines and artificial heart valves, cell phone cases and most plastic products, clothing not made from animal or plant fibers, soap, hand lotion, and garbage bags. He concludes that every pucking thing depends on the oil-based infrastructure, and the real crisis will be running out of it before an alternative is found. Now, if we think everything is dependent on oil infrastructure, absolutely everything, there is not one source of alternative energy that doesn't depend on oil. Let's take hydro dams, for example. It's a given that building a dam requires massive earth-moving equipment like bulldozers, excavators, dump trucks, and cranes, all typically powered by diesel fuel, a petroleum product. Without oil-derived fuels, mobilizing and operating this fleet at remote sites would be impractical. Beyond the energy for cement kilns, often natural gas or oil, the mixing, pumping, and pouring of concrete uses oil-based additives like plasticizers and foam-release agents to improve workability and prevent sticking. Vibrators and pumps for placing concrete also run on diesel generators. Now, even if one would make the argument that once a dam is built, we can produce energy without the dependence of oil, they would be dead wrong. Once a dam is in operation, its turbines, generators, gates, and mechanical components need petroleum-based lubricants to reduce friction, prevent wear, and handle high pressures. Without these, parts would seize up quickly under constant water flow and load. And not to mention the backup power systems of dams. Many dams rely on diesel generators for emergency power during outages or low water levels to keep control systems, pumps, and safety mechanisms running. And the rabbit hole continues if we keep going on, like the monitoring and repair tools. Sensors, cables, and electronics often incorporate plastic casings and insulation from oil. Maintenance crews use oil-fueled vehicles, trucks, boats, helicopters, to access remote areas for inspections, repairs, or sediment removal. Now let's tackle solar panels. They are great, but still they are not freed from the grip of oil. The materials and components depend on oil. Encapsulants and backsheets, the photovoltaic cells, the part that converts sunlight to electricity, are sandwiched between layers of ethylene vinyl acetate, or EVA, a copolymer derived from ethylene, a petrochemical from oil/natural gas. The backsheet is often polyester or polyvinyl fluoride, again, petrochemical-based plastics that protect against moisture and UV damage. And there are the frames, sealants, and adhesives. Aluminum frames are common, but sealants like polyisobutylene and polyurethanes, used to bond and waterproof, come straight from oil-derived chemicals. Without these, panels would degrade very fast in outdoor conditions. Not to mention the anti-reflective coatings and other plastics. Many panels use petrochemical resins for coatings that boost efficiency, plus various synthetic components in junctions and wiring insulation. Plus, the manufacturing process requires high-energy smelting and purification. Producing polysilicon, the core of most solar cells, requires extreme heat over 1,000 degrees Celsius to smelt quartz sand with carbon reductants, often powered by coal or gas in factories, especially in China, which dominates approximately 80% of global production. This step alone embeds fossil fuel energy into every panel. We don't even have to go on the transportation, on the supply chain, on the installation, on the maintenance and operations. And wind turbines, well, they are definitely not a solution. Just look at the wastelands of abandoned wind turbines just from the past 10 years alone. And definitely not green.
What happens to wind farms or windmills when they've reached the end of their useful life?
Yeah, James, thanks for having me. This is becoming an increasing problem that we're seeing throughout the state of Texas, and a lot of the footage that we were collecting recently and what you're viewing on the screen now are blades from a facility just outside of Sweetwater, Texas. And this farm has been in operation for about 10 years. And those blades have reached their usable life. They're made 100% out of fiberglass, and they have some other internal components, but mainly fiberglass. And there's no real process or mechanism to recycle these blades. And so once they reach their usable life, we're seeing more of these. I like to call them turbine graveyards popping up throughout the state, some to the scale.
A great point from Landman is this: if any of these alternative energies truly worked, the big giants like BP Oil, Chevron, ExxonMobil, Shell would all jump in those alternatives if they truly worked, because extracting oil is the most dangerous job in the world. There is a killer scene in Landman Season 1, Episode 6. Monty drops a line during a meeting with Tommy. Do you know who the biggest financial backers of green initiatives are? Saudi Arabia and Russia. He frames it as a strategic play where pushing green policies in the West, like reducing drilling or stricter regulations, suppresses U.S. production, letting OPEC Plus, led by Saudi/Russia, amp up their output, tighten global supply, spike prices, and trigger another oil boom in the States. He even ties it to politics, saying a shift in administration might just kick the can down the road a couple of years, but the boom is inevitable. It's a classic Taylor Sheridan cynical take. The Green Revolution gets hyped as saving the planet, but behind the scenes, it's partly funded, manipulated by the biggest oil players to protect their dominance. The reality check of that claim is that Saudi Arabia has been pouring massive money into renewables, over $188 billion, 705 billion Saudi riyals, committed through the Saudi Green Initiative as of late 2024, aiming for 50% renewable electricity by 2030, huge solar wind farms, and green hydrogen exports. Vision 2030 is all about diversifying away from oil dependency long term. But critics, including some reviews of Landman, call Monty's line exaggerated or nonsense. Saudi isn't secretly the biggest banker of global green initiatives to sabotage the West. It's more about hedging their own future as oil demand peaks. Russia is much weaker on this front. Renewables, excluding big hydro, are tiny, goals for modest growth but heavily fossil fuel reliant. Investments exist, some wind solar projects, but nowhere near biggest backer levels. Post-sanctions, they're even more locked into oil gas exports. The manipulative angle has some echoes in real geopolitics. OPEC Plus does cut production to support prices, and high oil prices can ironically boost renewable investment elsewhere, as alternatives look cheaper. Oil states diversifying into green tech could extend their energy influence beyond fossils. But the direct, they fund green to kill US oil and boom again claim is more conspiracy-flavored rhetoric than proven fact. Reviews slam it as oil industry myth-making. Now let's see if this myth conspiracy were to be true. If we're treating this as a thought experiment, assuming the oil industry, or major players like cartels, deliberately manipulate supply and demand purely to jack up barrel prices, it's not too far from how things play out in reality with groups like OPEC. Plus, they don't frame it as manipulation, but coordinating production quotas to influence prices is standard practice. The mechanism could work, why it's plausible based on real-world parallels, and the ripple effects on everything since oil underpins so much of the global economy. How it would affect prices of everything. Since oil isn't just fuel, it's feedstock for plastics, chemicals, fertilizers, and more, manipulated high prices would cascade through the economy like a domino effect. Low prices might temporarily ease things but could lead to underinvestment, setting up future shortages. Here's a high-level breakdown of impacts. Assuming sustained manipulation pushes average barrel prices up 20 to 50% over baseline, from $80 to $100 to $120 per barrel. Transportation, fuels like gasoline, diesel, jet fuel, 80% of oil use. Gas prices jump 25 to 40%, raising shipping trucking costs by 10 to 20%. Everything shipped, groceries, electronics, gets pricier, airfares rise, hitting tourism and business travel. Inflation spikes as logistics eat into margins. Manufacturing and goods. Petrochemicals for plastics, synthetics, paints, adhesives. Raw materials costs up 15 to 30%. Plastic packaging or car parts cost more. Supply chains slow, worsening shortages. Agriculture and food, fertilizers, pesticides, farm machinery, fuel. Fertilizer prices soar 20 to 50%, diesel tractors adds 10 to 15%, food costs rise 5 to 20%, wheat, meat, global hunger risks if exports drop, supermarket bills climb, fueling overall CPI. Energy and utilities, oil for heating, backup power, indirect via electricity if gas or coal linked. Households pay more for warmth or light. Industries like data centers or hospitals face higher operations costs passed to consumers. Construction and infrastructure. Asphalt for roads, lubricants for equipment, concrete additives. Road building costs up 10 to 25%. Machinery maintenance higher. Housing, bridges, dams get expensive. Delays in projects inflate real estate and taxes. Healthcare and essentials. Plastics for devices, syringes, transport for supplies, pharma chemicals. Medical supplies up 5 to 15%. Drug production costs rise. Healthcare premiums or out-of-pocket expenses increase. Everyday items like soap or lotion follow suit. Economy-wide ties into inflation, interest rate, GDP. Overall inflation plus 2.5% annually. Central banks hike rates to curb it. Wages lag. Recessions loom if demand drops. Stock markets volatile as energy stocks boom while others suffer. Emerging markets hit hardest due to import dependency. Long story short, a 10% oil price hike often translates to 0.2 to 0.5% global inflation bump per economic models. If manipulated long-term, it could add trillions in costs worldwide. Now, taking all that into consideration, green initiatives in general are expensive initially. If the oil industry decides to tighten production and drive oil prices up, how would any project of green initiative ever succeed if it gets too expensive to invest in them? So, once you have this black, gushy liquid pumped out of the ground, once the most dangerous part is out of the way, and you have this liquid gold sealed in a barrel, that's where the science kicks in. Not saying that there isn't a science behind the drilling, from how geologists speculate where to find it and engineers plan how to drill it out, but refining it is where we understand how much we depend on it. Each barrel, once opened at the refinery, goes through a process where it's mixed with water under electric fields to strip out salts and crud. Then it's preheated to boiling hot and fired into the atmospheric distillation tower, a massive steel beast where heat and pressure separate it by boiling points. Lighter stuff rises like steam in a sauna, condensing into layers. Top refinery gases, methane to butane, these become LPG for your grill or feedstocks for more complex chems. Next, light naphtha, straight-run gasoline precursors or the base for cracking into ethylene, the building block of plastics like polyethylene. Heavy naphtha gets reformed into high-octane gas and aromatics, benzene, toluene for solvents, paints, and even aspirin precursors. Kerosene cut, cleaned up into jet fuel that powers 747s or home heating oil. Gas oils turned into diesel for trucks and ships or cracked further for more gas. Bottom residuum, the heavy tar-like stuff vacuum distilled to avoid burning it, yielding vacuum gas oil for more cracking, and the dregs for asphalt roads, bunker fuel for ocean tankers, or even coke for steel making. Over 90% of petrochemicals, like the EVA in solar panels or polyurethane in your sneakers, stem from these naphtha and gas streams, steam cracked into olefins that polymerize into 6,000 plus products. And in one barrel, maybe 19 gallons of gasoline, 11 of diesel, 4 of jet fuel, plus plastics and chemicals that touch every corner of life. It's not just energy, it's the skeleton of modern existence. Run out? Forget alternatives. Without this breakdown, the world grinds to a halt. The main source isn't dinosaurs. That's a widespread misconception, often tied to old marketing like Sinclair Oil's Dino logo. Instead, crude oil primarily comes from tiny marine microorganisms like plankton, algae, and diatoms, single-celled plants and animals that lived in ancient oceans. These organisms died, sank to the seafloor, got buried quickly in low-oxygen sediments, preventing full decay, and over tens to hundreds of millions of years heat, 60 to 120 degrees Celsius, and pressure transformed their remains into kerogen, then into liquid hydrocarbons, oil, and gas through a process called catagenesis. Dinosaurs, they lived mostly on land during the Mesozoic era, about 252 to 66 million years ago, and their remains rarely ended up in the oxygen-poor, deep marine environments needed for oil formation. Even marine reptiles like plesiosaurs might contribute trace amounts if conditions were perfect, but they're negligible. Oil is overwhelmingly from those microscopic ocean life forms. Coal, by contrast, comes mostly from land plants in ancient swamps. Carboniferous period, pre-dinosaurs. Now, tying into specific North American spots, Texas and the Permian Basin in West Texas, New Mexico. Massive oil here traces back to the Permian period, approximately 299 to 252 million years ago, when much of the region was covered by a vast inland sea connected to the ancient supercontinent Pangaea. Thriving marine life, plankton, algae, reefs, died off, sank, and got buried in thick sediments. The Permian Basin has some of the world's thickest deposits from this era. Ancient seas teemed with organic matter that turned into the huge reserves we pump today. It's currently the top U.S. oil producer. Parts of Texas were indeed underwater ancient oceans, Epiric seas during the Cretaceous too. Eagle Ford Shale, source for East Texas fields, with similar plankton burial. In short, imagine ancient oceans as massive algae farms blooming for millions of years, their dead cells piling up on the seafloor, getting buried deeper and deeper as continents shifted and sediments built up. Heat and pressure did the rest. No giant bones required. This happened repeatedly in Earth's history, especially in warm, shallow seas during periods like the Permian, Jurassic, and Cretaceous, creating the source rocks that feed today's fields. Let's look at metals like gold, copper, nickel, or even rare earths. They're tough to source, but we can swap them out when push comes to shove. Gold for conductivity in chips, silver or graphene can step in. Copper wiring, aluminum alloys work in a pinch. Hell, we're already dreaming big about mining asteroids, the moon, or deep-sea vents for those precious metals. Scarcity hurts, but innovation finds workarounds because the raw elements are still elements. Reconfigurable, recyclable, substitutable. Oil? That's a different beast. It's not just energy. It's the irreplaceable feedstock for the petrochemical empire that glues modern life together. Bio-based alternatives exist in labs. Plant-derived plastics, biolubricants from vegetable oils, green ammonia from renewable hydrogen, but they're nowhere near replacing oil's output economically or volumetrically today. Scaling them would require massive land, water, and energy inputs, often competing with food production. And unlike metals, you can't recycle oil back into crude once burned or transformed. It's a one-way street from ancient plankton to modern miracles. One question remains, what will happen when mankind runs out of oil before it can find a solution, a true replacement for fossil fuels? The blunt truth, we probably won't wake up one morning with empty pumps worldwide. Proven reserves, estimates vary, but commonly 47 to 56 years as of recent 2025 to 2026 figures give us roughly mid-century to late 2070s before the last drops get prohibitively expensive to extract. But the real crunch hits earlier with peak oil or peak demand production, where output maxes out and declines, driving prices sky high long before total depletion. Scenarios range from manageable transition to chaos, gradual wean-off, most likely path. Prices climb, forcing efficiency, better EVs, hybrids, public transit, biofuels, hydrogen, and renewables to fill gaps. Petrochemicals become premium, plastics scarcer, fertilizers pricier, hitting food costs hard, lubricants specialized. Global economy slows but adapts over decades if we invest now. Renewables are already cheaper for new power in many places, and tech like advanced batteries or synthetic fuels could soften the blow. Abrupt shock, worst case. If alternatives lag, grid can't handle EV surge or geopolitical wars over remaining fields, supply crunches trigger massive inflation. Transport grinds, shipping, aviation, trucking skyrocket, food shortages from fertilizer farm fuel shortages, billions rely on synthetic nitrogen, manufacturing halts for plastics chemicals. Emerging markets suffer most, recessions, unrest, even causing resource wars. Globalization reverses, local economies dominate. The irony, high prices ironically accelerate the shift, making solar, wind, nuclear, and bio-alternatives viable faster. We didn't run out of whale oil, kerosene replaced it. But oil's web is deeper. A botched transition could mean decades of hardship, famine risks, and stalled progress on AI, medicine, everything. Bottom line, oil isn't eternal, but its grip is. The crisis won't be no more oil. It'll be no more cheap, abundant oil before we've built the full replacement. That's the ticking clock. Thanks for watching.